This is the third day of this July 2024 7-day sesshin. We're going to switch horses here, and from Yuan Wu to Japanese master who lived about roughly half an hour, who lived roughly a generation after him. And this is Muso Kokushi. Kokushi means national teacher. He was the teacher of the emperor in Japan at the time. His other name is Muso Soseki. I'll forego reading biographical material about him. There's not much that we have anyway, but obviously, being the national teacher, he was someone of immense stature and realization. Maybe not obviously, because politics figured into some of that then, but he was, according to what I've read, someone of real attainment. And this is from the book Dream Conversations on Buddhism and Zen, and it's translated by Thomas Cleary. Starting right at the beginning, he says, "Those who seek liberation for themselves alone cannot become fully enlightened. Though it may be said that one who is not already liberated cannot liberate others, the very process of forgetting oneself to help others is itself liberating." I think most recently of a situation that suddenly developed right before the sesshin when our head cook injured her wrist, and at that time for that one day she thought she wouldn't be able to do the job. So then who becomes the head cook? Arguably the most difficult job in sesshin other than the head monitor. Well, there were only 2 or 3 candidates who would be able to do it through experience and know-how. And one of them was Dara Sensei. She just said, "Sure, I'll do it." I could imagine teachers who were just yearning to have the chance to just face the wall in a sesshin, a 7-day sesshin, rather than take on one of the 2 most difficult jobs of the sesshin. As it turned out, the wrist healed enough that she didn't have to step into the breach. But it's this spirit of just serving. Okay. He continues, "Therefore, those who seek to benefit themselves alone actually harm themselves by doing so, while those who help others also help themselves by doing so." This could be so easy to forget in this sesshin environment where, understandably, people want to just let go of everything, have no responsibilities, and just apply themselves fiercely to the practice in this 1 week. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's great. That's one of the great things about sesshin. No real responsibilities. Most of us have a lot more weight we're carrying outside sesshin, and then we get into sesshin and we have the freedom to just keep our eyes down and just go straight ahead. But what he's saying is that sacrificing, doing something for the sake of the greater good is itself a way to develop greater awakening. The very process of forgetting oneself to help others is itself liberating. That is, if you don't think about it, I can imagine someone volunteering in order to feel better about themselves, feel virtuous, and then possibly feeling divided about taking on that responsibility. And later, why did I do this? This is so much work. I was looking so much forward to not having any of these responsibilities. But to just cleanly, okay, it needs to be done. Someone's got to step into it and do it. No thoughts, no afterthoughts. But just making it your practice. And then the next one, he says there are 3 kinds of compassion. One kind is compassion whose object is living beings as such. Another is compassion whose object is elements. The third is objectless compassion. And then he goes back to the first one. The compassion whose object is living beings as such is the compassion of one who thinks beings are real and their delusions are real, and who wishes to liberate these real beings from their real delusions. This is sentimental compassion, which is limited by feelings. It is still just emotion and desire, not real liberative compassion. This points to the uncompromising purity of Zen teaching, Buddhist teaching, really, is that it's really talking about compassion before realizing the illusory nature of beings, of things. And it hints at the attachment to the idea that I'm going to save that person or help that person. Roshi Kapleau used to say that the difference between a Buddha and a Bodhisattva is that a Bodhisattva to some faint, very, very faint degree is still slightly attached to the idea of self and other. I'm helping you. For most religious people in the world, that's enough. But it's not enough, seen from the purest point of view in Zen. Just to finish what Roshi Kapleau used to say, whereas a Buddha just helps others as naturally as breathing. There's no notion in the mind, I'm helping you. Poor you. You need my help. Hey, it's not bad. It's pretty good to be able to do things, good deeds in the world. We need those people. He's just saying that it's not the purest kind of compassion. And then he talks about the compassion of one who thinks beings are real. Oh, excuse me, that's the same one. And he says the compassion whose objects is elements is the compassion of one who sees all beings as conditional productions of causal relations, as compounds of elements that have no real person or thing in themselves. This is illusory compassion for illusory beings, using illusory means to liberate illusory beings from illusory delusions. It's pretty close to the first one. Although it transcends the sticky emotion of sentimental compassion, This dreamlike compassion still retains the image of illusion, so it is not yet truly liberated compassion. Excuse me. And then the third kind, what he said earlier, is objectless compassion. He doesn't really even mention that. This would be what just referred to a minute ago as the compassion of a Buddha. It just freely reaches out without no idea of real or illusory others to help. This is like there's a koan in the Blue Cliff record where the question the monk asked, what does the bodhisattva of compassion make of all those hands and eyes? For those of you who don't know, sometimes in bodhisattva figures, especially the bodhisattva of compassion, you see lots of eyes in the figure, in the statue, and also hands. They're bodhisattvas figures in Japan I saw that have hundreds of arms and hands. And the master, his answer is, he says it's like one in the middle of the night reaching back with outstretched hand for the pillow. It's like one reaching out with outstretched hand for a pillow in the middle of the night. Is that conscious helping? Unconscious helping? It's the most natural kind of responsiveness with no notion of self. The next little segment, he says, there is ultimately no means of safeguarding anything in this world. Anything you gain can be lost, destroyed, or taken away. For this reason, if you make the acquisition and retention of goods or status your aim in life, this is a way to anxiety and sorrow. It seems so self-evident, logical even, that anything we acquire can be lost. It's in the nature of coming and going, worldly things, and people. Milarepa is one of the most highly esteemed masters in the Tibetan tradition, and I always loved the way he put it. All worldly pursuits have but one unavoidable and inevitable end, which is sorrow. Acquisitions end in dispersion, buildings in destruction, meetings in separation, births in death. Knowing this, one should from the very first renounce acquisition and heaping up and building and meeting, and faithful to an eminent teacher, set about realizing the truth which has no birth or death. You don't have to be someone of immense spiritual stature to work this out. We meet someone we love. Maybe we marry or maintain a partnership, have children. It's all going to end in separation. That man or woman we love so deeply, it's just a matter of time. Okay, if the partners meet with a fatal accident together in the same plane or the same car, okay. But otherwise, one is going to go before the other. And it's going to hurt. Buildings end in destruction. When we were setting about to design the Chapin Mill Retreat Center, the architects asked, well, for how long? What is your time scale? How long do you want this to last? And we've looked at each other and said, 500 years, why not? But is it going to last 500 years? We don't know. It's sure doing well now, being restored, maintained. It's just such a joy to come here after a year and see the condition of both of these facilities out here, the various houses in Arnold Park. It's wonderful, but it's not going to last forever. Maybe 500 years, maybe 300, maybe less. But then again, it can be rebuilt. This has happened over and over again to the great monasteries and temples in Japan, China, and no doubt in other religions too. But first comes the destruction, the deterioration. So we hear here Milarepa is urging the monastic path of which is more completely than any other vocation, let's call it, avoids attachments. And monasticism hasn't gotten much traction in the West, United States or Europe or other Western countries. But the least we can do, those of us with friends and family and houses and cars and all the rest of it, is to be aware that we're on thin ice. We just don't know. Doesn't mean not to buy houses, not to get married, not to have children, but know what is inevitable. I would imagine that everyone here, sitting sesshin, both in the Zendo here and at home, online, has more than most people, more awareness of this impermanence of everything than most people. It's a way of what we're doing is the most we can, in a way, to contend with, to be able in the future to contend with loss. And to probably many of us, it's quite amazing that most people don't face the inevitable of what's sure to come. Not facing it, really facing it means doing something about it. As Milarepa says, set about realizing the truth that is beyond impermanence, the changelessness within change. And then when we lose people, it still hurts, but it's different. It's different. Who would not want to prepare for that through daily sitting and sesshin when we can? And then Zen Master Dogen, to me, is even puts it even more succinctly. Those who would practice the Dharma must deeply, deeply feel the passing nature of things and have faith in karma. There probably is it seems to me, no more powerful, deeper fuel for practice than this sensitivity, this awareness of the impermanence of all of us and everything. Next, he says, it is a characteristic tendency of human beings to indulge in emotions such as happiness, grief, or anger in response to present conditions. That is, we react, failing to balance these feelings with the awareness that present conditions are results of past causes. So just a little reflection. Okay, reacting to circumstances or conditions, but then maybe momentarily reflecting that this is the effect of previous causes. He goes on, it is illogical to face the present only as an object of enjoyment or tolerance, neglecting to use it as the opportunity to create the future. It's that phrase, living for the moment. This would be what Roshi Kapleau realized when he found Zen, that he was fed up with the joyless pursuit of pleasure. In Zen, we are training to live in the moment, but not for the moment, just for immediate gratification, pleasure, and happiness. In other words, widen the time frame. Have some awareness of something beyond just the present. Awareness of causation. And that segues into his next one. He says, causes are complex and have different time scales. The efforts of the individual are not the sole determining factor in the individual's condition in life, because everyone is part of the nexus of society and nature and the continuum of time. It is common for people to attribute causes wrongly because of misperceptions of real relationships. That is, it's a kind of a narrow, pinched notion that something that befalls me now is what I set in motion some other time. It's not just that simplistic me. I did that. I'm suffering now because must have done that then. It's much more complex, as he says, than that. And then also with respect to time, we see people, terrible people in the world, doing terrible things to others, who sometimes we see no consequences. They're able to get away. But that's where people who don't believe in rebirth have a real problem on their hands. Wait a minute. All of those terrible things he did, and he still is slipping through every legal net that he's ever faced. Wait. But, yeah, who's to say that it's just this lifetime? He continues, every cause is the effect of something else, and every effect is the cause of something else. What may seem a curse may be a blessing, and what may seem a blessing may be a curse. Hardship is a blessing when it spurs effort and development. Ease is a curse when it increases complacency and self-indulgence. I once heard that that Gurdjieff, the teacher from the Middle East, became widely known in some circles in the 20th century, that he once said every young man should get very sick once. Maybe he made it, if that's true, if he actually said that, then maybe he was just singling out men because of our, some deficit in our, but I would say every young person should get very sick once. It really, really wakes you up. I may have heard it when I was in bed for 2 months with a severe case of hepatitis while I was here on staff. We take so much for granted, don't we? We're going to live, okay, we're not going to live forever, we know that, but surely we'll live till we're 80 or 90. Isn't that kind of within the bell curve, the middle of the bell curve, more or less? I think his use of the word young was just the arrogance of youth. What Andy Rooney said, to the young, death is just a distant rumor. And then as the years, the decades pass, it isn't so distant anymore. There's so many inspiring stories of the great masters falling ill to some terrible tuberculosis or some other illness, and then fighting their way through it, but in the midst of it, soberly recognizing that we don't get many chances to come in contact with the Dharma. That we need to make it count. in astrology, there are harmonious aspects among the planets in a birth chart. There are harmonious aspects and there are difficult aspects. And for anyone who might study it, you realize that to have a chart with major squares, let's say, the squares are difficult, they chafe, they grind, and the personality, to have a chart with major squares isn't just good karma, isn't just bad karma, because that very chafing, that discontent can inspire one to try to transcend it, to find some spiritual path to lead us out of difficulty. And Gandhi's birth chart was loaded with squares. And then you have people with the other trines or sextiles. These are the basically triangles, which are harmonious and favorable and it suggest ease. And such people, if you have too many of them without the difficult ones with some balance, then you can just lead a dissolute life. Everything comes easily, and you never really use this human life for its best potential. So just how the interchangeability of what we call good karma, bad karma, ease, difficulty. Many of you, I think enough of you have heard the story of the lost horse enough that I won't repeat that, but it's a timeless story of how misfortune turns out in the long run to be a positive, a good thing, and good fortune turns out to be the opposite, and it goes back and forth. It's a good thing to bear in mind, to help us lighten up just a little bit with the approach of the general election in November. Just help us lighten up a little bit, that we don't know. How can we know what will happen as a result of the election in what will happen in 10 years or 20 or 50 or 100 years? We tend to see things with such a narrow vision, narrow time scale. We don't know how things will turn out. And then he says more, in a way, he says more about this in his next segment. If you forget your feelings about things of the world, they become enlightening teachings. So if you're not attached to what you like or dislike about things that happen, they can become enlightening teachings. And then he says, if you get emotional about enlightening teachings, it becomes a worldly thing. Attachment. So again, to see things that strike us as awful, tragic, disastrous, whether in electoral politics or anything else, to have some distance from it, and recognize that we don't know. And this starts with sitting. It is sitting by detaching from thoughts. That's a phrase that you've heard at least 2 or 3 times in this session. Detaching from thoughts. Which really means detaching from the world of objects, things supposedly out there. We are developing detachment through daily sitting, and even more so in sesshin. And that is immensely helpful in weathering adversity. He goes on, doing good, seeking rewards, is contaminated virtue. Doing good without thought of reward, dedicating it to enlightenment, is uncontaminated virtue. Like volunteering to be head cook. Contamination and non-contamination refer to the state of mind of the doer, not to the good deed itself. I'm going to skip a few, I think, good things to get to the topic of Makyo in Sesshin. The name he gives it is demons. There are various mental phenomena and mental postures that obstruct the potential for true understanding. Because of their harmful and destructive nature, they are called demons or devils. So that's, if this is 13th century language, demons or devils. These demons include greed, hatred, conceit, opinionated views, addiction to meditation states, pride in knowledge, desire for personal liberation for one's own sake alone, sentimental compassion, anxious haste to attain enlightenment, idolizing teachers, rejecting the teaching because of finding fault with teachers' external behavior, indulging in passions, and fearing passion. Some here that could just comment on, greed, hatred, conceit. Conceit, as probably most of you know, conceit in Buddhism doesn't just mean thinking you're better than other people, you're superior. It also works as when you think you're somehow worse than others, you're inferior. That's just egoism. I'm different from other people. I have a harder time. I'm less than other people. It's just an inverted sense of what we usually think of as egotism, but it's still egotism. Thinking one is somehow separate. Pride in knowledge. We know there are people who are smug about how much they know, how much they've read, how brainy they are in their studies and so forth. Anxious haste to attain enlightenment. And so forth. And then he says, these demons, these obstructive mind states, these demons may arise because of incorrect application of mind. They may also flare up in a correctly applied mind in which they are about to die out, just as a candle flame will flare up just before it goes out. This is a wonderful analogy because what has happened to many people, especially late in Sesshin, is just hitting a brick wall or tumbling down a hole into some obstructive, awful memory or some other obstruction, and it becomes so powerful. It's shocking. It's so distressing when your mind for 5 or 6 days has gotten more and more clear, and you feel like you're really getting airborne and beyond thoughts, and then pow, something, you dig up something without even wanting to, something comes to the surface that it just upends you for a while, for an hour or a day. I've heard many of these stories in Doksan, and I went through them myself. And I remind people that this is, you can say, is confirmation that you're getting so deep, that you're getting into those deeper character stains, those deeper afflictions that you normally aren't in touch with, and that suddenly here they are. Just as a candle flame will flare up just before it goes out. This was really helpful when I realized that this is how the mind can work. I would, more than a few times late in sesshin, I would slip into discouragement until I had the presence of mind to realize, okay, this is just the mind throwing everything it has at me to get me to stop. So this discouragement I'm feeling is actually should be encouraging. I've got the ego on the ropes. That's the way I used to put it to myself. And a device like that, a little mental gymnastics like that, if it can get you out of the hole, why not use it? Because it works. It's just a way of turning the tables on this delusive self. And seeing that it's just temporary. That's the key thing. Seeing it as temporary. It's not your nature to be inadequate. It's just some misperception that's arisen because of losing your armor, having that armor dissolve, and then suddenly running into this heavy weather, but not to be deceived by it. And then he says more about these demons. In Japanese, they use the term makyo. Usually, makyo, strictly speaking, means hallucinations. And these become more common as sesshin goes on. But we can use it more broadly to mean these kind of obstructive states of mind. And then he says, a simple method of quelling demons, that is to get free of these states of mind, is to refrain from clinging to anything mentally. This is illustrated by an ancient story in which a strange person used to roam around the grounds of a hermitage of a certain meditation master. Sometimes he would appear as a Buddhist saint, sometimes as a celestial king, sometimes radiating extraordinary light, sometimes uttering strange sayings. This continued for 10 years, and then it stopped. The meditation master told his disciples, "A celestial demon had been coming here to bother me, but no matter what appearance it created, I dealt with it by not looking or listening. The demon's manifestation had an end, but my not looking and not listening have no end." Here we are, advice centuries back that still work today. The key thing is not to dwell in whatever phenomena come to mind, whether it's hallucinations or psychological states of anxiety, fear, pride, all of these potential obstructions, just to not attach to them, not let them grab your attention, keep the attention on the practice. And then they still may persist, these states. Doesn't matter, just keep the attention on the practice, back to the breath. Keep the breath in mind, keep the koan in mind. Don't be diverted. Don't be lured into seeing these things that seem so humiliating about yourself, or just plain old macchio, florid macchio even, that can be actually quite entertaining. Don't go there. We're not trying to suppress them. None of this. That won't work, to try to suppress them. Just keep your attention off them. Keep the attention directed, aimed at the practice and not at any of that stuff. Then they'll fade away sooner or later. They need our attention to survive these states. They need our attention like we need oxygen. We can dispense with that oxygen as we choose, by keeping it on what matters, the practice we're working on. Our time is up. We'll stop now and recite the 4 vows.